For months now, the Pac-12 and Big 12 fans have been going at each other on social media, debating, even arguing over which conference is the best, which conference has the best teams, and which conference brings more value to the table when it comes to media deals. Well, I've decided to put the argument to bed, and I'm going to sit down and we're going to look at some numbers, and we're going to find out, by gosh, just which conference is more valuable. So pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz. Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. So pull up that chair and let me serve you up this shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap today, we're looking at the value of the Pac-12 versus the value of the Big 12, and I've got a lot of numbers to show you. Got some spreadsheets I've spent some time putting together for you. Before I get into it, though, I want to apologize for my voice being the way it is. I've been under the weather, have some kind of cold or something. But I've been jumping at the bit to get this info out to you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's dive into the numbers. The first spreadsheet I want to show you is looking at football revenue for each school in these conferences. I got this information from the Department of Education's Equity and Athletics Data Analysis, which I found through a website called Go Banking Rates. And I used data from the year 2019. I didn't want to use 2020 because that was the COVID year, and that skews numbers, and there was nothing available after 2020, so I used 2019, the last year pre-COVID. When you look at it, the average in the Big 12, the average team made about $36.4 million in football revenue in 2019, whereas in the Pac-12, the schools made an average of about $53.1 million in revenue in 2019. Now, when you look at these in order, and obviously you can see there, the orange represents the Big 12 and the green is the Pac-12. When you look at these in order by school, you can see that the top two revenue schools on this list, or the top three actually, are Pac-12 schools in Washington, Oregon, and Utah. Washington made about $91.7 million in football revenue in 2019. Oregon, a pretty good distance between second place, actually, with $77.6 million. You have to go all the way down here near the bottom of the list to see my West Virginia Mountaineers, who brought in only $18.9 million, actually, you could say $19 million in revenue in football in 2019. Not a good number. West Virginia's revenue has not been great the last few years. Hence, one of the reasons they decided to bring in a new athletic director. And he actually said in an interview recently, that's one of the things he wants to improve is revenue. And now you can see why. We have schools like UCF, who was a group of five school at the time ahead of us on this list. That is not good. But the team last in revenue in 2019 of both of these conferences was Cincinnati, who brought in about $15.8 million in football revenue. The next thing I wanted to look at was fan base size. When you're looking at value of conferences, fans like talking about fan base size. How big is your fan base? Because that obviously can help generate revenue with merch sales, game attendance, and even TV viewership, which we'll talk about in a minute. But when you look at fan base size, the average school in the Big 12 has about 960,000 fans, with West Virginia being the largest with 1.84 million. The Pac-12 averages about 1.67 million fans per school. That is skewed slightly, though, by Oregon, who has 5.5 million fans. That's right. Oregon has 5.5 million fans. Now, I want to make sure I let you guys know these numbers that I have on these spreadsheets. They do not include Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12, and they do not include USC and UCLA in the Pac-12. Okay, so these are apples to apples numbers. But when you look at these in order by school, you can see the top of the list is Oregon, obviously 5.5 million. Washington at 2.4 million, and Arizona State at 1.95 million. Now, obviously, as you can see, there are three. You have to go through three schools in the Pac-12 before you get to the team in the Big 12 with the largest fan base, which, like I said earlier, is West Virginia with 1.84 million fans. I got the information from Tony Altimore, who derived the information from synthesis from the New York Times from 2011, 2014, and 2019, and then also New York Times 538 studies. And when you look at average TV viewership, this is the one thing people talk about a lot, especially when it comes to TV deals and media rights and things like that. We all know that TV viewership really matters. It may be one of the most important factors. When you look at the Big 12, the average TV viewership per week per school is about 890,000 viewers per game. And then the Pac-12 is averaging about 880,000 viewers per game per week. And when you put them in order, you can see Oklahoma State is at the top of the list at 1.64 million viewers per week, followed by TCU at 1.5 million a week. Then you have three Pac-12 schools, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington. I was surprised to see Stanford this high on this list. They're averaging more viewers per week than Oregon. Now, if you look at just 2022 numbers, which I did not include here, This is actually a 5-year running average from 2016 through 2020. I did not include 2022 because I didn't have 2021 numbers to add to it, so it would have been skewed. But in 2022, Oregon actually had over 2 million viewers per week. So Oregon's numbers in 2022 were really good. So if you added that to it, Oregon's numbers would be much higher. But for the sake of this argument and for fairness of these charts here, I looked at a 5-year average from 2016 through 2020. Information again from Tony Altimore, who got it from someone named Zach Miller, who writes a column called Run It Back with Zach. West Virginia is about sixth on this list with 1.27 million viewers per week. So it's not too bad, especially for a team that hasn't been playing that well the last few years. And then when you look at everything, now I added a few more categories in here as well, but here's everything, all the averages on a spreadsheet, and then the red font means that conference falls behind the other conference in that category. Now let's look at one thing I looked at was 50-mile population. When you look at the size of the populations of the cities where these schools are, within 50 miles of the schools, in the Big 12, the average population is 1.9 million people. Pac-12's average of about 2.3 million. That's because they have Seattle. That's because they have San Francisco. Whereas the Big 12's largest cities are Houston and Dallas. Now, you also got to throw Phoenix into the Pac-12 as well. Phoenix is also a very large TV market. When you look at average fan base size, like I said earlier, you got 960,000 for the Big 12, 1.67 million for the Pac-12. Another one I threw in there was weeks in the AP poll, because this is a good measurement of how good your football program's been over the course of history, over the course of time, because that matters when you're evaluating your brand. When you look at weeks in the AP poll, the average team in the Big 12 has been in the AP poll 179 times. The average in the Pac-12 is 244 times. Washington tops the list. 456 weeks they have spent in the AP poll. Tops in the Big 12 is, again, West Virginia, 306 weeks in the AP poll. But that number, 456 to 306, 150-week gap between the top team in the Pac-12 and the top team in the Big 12. Average football revenue, I've got 2020 on here, but it's actually 2019. That's a misprint. I apologize for that. But when you look, I mentioned this earlier, 36.4 million for the Big 12, 53.10 million for the Pac-12. Social media engagement. This is another metric I wanted to add to this chart, because this is becoming more and more important. Because when you look at social media engagement, it shows a couple different things. It shows how passionate your fans are, number one, because if they're passionate, they're going to be, and they're active on social media, then it shows you they care. It also shows you, how many fans there are. It kind of gives, obviously there's the metric I showed you earlier with fan base size, but this is another way they can measure, well, how many fans does this team actually have? And if they do have them, how passionate are they and how active are they? But in the Big 12, the average team is 44th in the country. In the Pac-12, the average is 43rd in the country. But there again, Oregon is a major outlier here. Oregon is 5th in the country in social media engagement by their fans. The best in the Big 12 is West Virginia, who comes in at number 18 in the country. And just a caveat here, this only includes Facebook and Instagram. It does not include Twitter. And there again, this information, again, comes from Tony Altimore. And then when you look at average TV viewers per week, 890,000, like I said, for the Big 12, 880,000 for the Pac-12. And then average athletic budget in millions. This is interesting. When I looked at this, and the reason I put this on here is because when you look at athletic budget, it shows how serious a school is about investing in their athletic department and about winning. The more money you invest, that usually leads to more winning, or at least it should. Some very interesting tidbits here. Number one, the average athletic budget in the Big 12 is $86 million. Average athletic budget in the Pac-12 is $99 million. With Stanford leading the charge with a $139 million athletic budget. That totally shocked me. We all want to throw shade at Stanford and schools like that for not caring about sports. And maybe in some cases that's true when it comes to maybe their fans attending games and things like that. But let's keep in mind, Stanford's not been very good for the last few years. That's going to impact some numbers. But Stanford, as a program and as a school, takes their sports very seriously, apparently, because their athletic budget is $139 million. Washington is second, or actually TCU is second. If you're looking at both conferences, TCU is second with an athletic budget of $118.5 million. Now, what's weird about that? TCU is the smallest school in the new Big 12 as far as enrollment, but yet they have the largest athletic budget in the conference. That's amazing to me, and it shows you how much they care and how serious they're taking it, and it shows you why they're so good right now. in not only football, but they've also improved in basketball. And I'll be honest, I don't really follow the other sports that closely. But you've got Washington coming in at 116 million. Kansas is 116 million. Oregon's at 108 million. Surprisingly, I thought they would be higher than that. And then you've got Baylor and West Virginia coming in both at around $101 million in overall athletic budget. Now, once again, my sources for all this information I just shared with you: Tony Altimore, who's a strategy consultant; Run It Back with Zach, who's a sports journalist; Go Banking Rates, which is a website; and then the Department of Education's Equity and Athletics Data Analysis. So what do these numbers show us? Well, obviously, when you look at the numbers here, there's a lot of red on the Big 12 side. That means the Big 12 falls behind the Pac-12 in every category but one, and that's the average TV viewership. And they only beat them by 10,000 people a week. Okay? They only fall one spot behind them in social media engagement. And like I said, Oregon is a huge outlier there, but they fall pretty far behind them in categories like average fan base size and weeks in the AP poll, average athletic budget, things like that. But here's the kicker, though. If you take Oregon and Washington out of the equation in the Pac-12, the Big 12 is very even with them. Oregon and Washington are two really, really good brands, and these numbers have proven that to me. This exercise in this study really proved that to me. And Washington's been in the AP poll 456 times. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Oregon, over 5.4 million fans or 5.5 million fans. I didn't know that. So those are outliers that really drive these averages up for the Pac-12. But as long as those two teams are in the conference, the Pac-12 is going to remain a very viable, and a valuable conference. Both. They're going to be viable and valuable. And that's why at some point I expect these two programs to end up in probably the Big Ten, and heck, who knows? They could even end up in the SEC if the SEC ever decides to go national. But with that being said, I also think when you look at these numbers, this shows you what kind of superstar Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark is, because when you look at these numbers, you think, man, there's no way the Big 12 is going to get a better media deal than the Pac-12. And well, maybe they won't. But the fact that the Pac-12 is taking so long to get their deal done, and there are all these rumors out there that the number's not going to be in the size of the Big 12, and these rumors are not just coming from fans. It's being reported in the media by legit media sources, national outlets. All the trouble they're having getting a media deal done shows the genius of Brett Yormark. He was able to jump in line, get his deal with ESPN and Fox done, and it left no demand left. There's now no demand for any more college football content or college sports content, at least not enough to make the Pac-12's value be where they feel it should be. Now, it doesn't mean maybe they will end up landing a deal as valuable as the Big 12's deal, but man, they're taking an awful long time to do it. And at the end of the day, I think the Pac-12 is going to be stuck with a deal that's probably a lot less than what they are worth. I'll be honest with you. As long as Oregon and Washington are in that conference, this is a valuable league. And they're probably not going to get paid like it because of the decisions made by maybe it's George Kliavkoff, maybe it's the CEOs, the presidents of these universities that are making these decisions. But whatever it is, they're falling behind the TV media deal race because of poor leadership, not because they're not valuable. Let me know in the comment section, Couz's Corner family, what you think about these numbers. What do you think about this data that I presented to you? Do you think the Pac-12 is more valuable? Do you think this proves it? Or do you think it doesn't prove that? Maybe you have a different opinion. I want to hear your thoughts. Guys, if you want to support my channel here financially, you can do it in a few different ways. Number one, you can check out the link in my description box. Check out my merch store. You can get you a T-shirt, a hoodie, a ball cap, coffee mug, a lot of different items, several different designs to choose from. You can hit the Heart Thanks option below, make a one-time donation. There's also a link in my description box where you can buy you some really good coffee from Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. They have a lot of different flavors to choose from. Their coffee is made all natural. There's no chemicals in this coffee. So go check out Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters by using the link in my description box. And if you put Couz's, COUZ', in the comment section of your order, I will get a small commission for the sale. You can use the Fanatics link in my description box to do your Fanatic shopping. You don't have to buy the product shown. Last but not least, you can support my channel for absolutely free. You can like the video by hitting the thumbs up button. You can drop the comment. You can share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. Help me get to 5,000. I'm getting closer and closer to that number, but I need your help to do it. So please subscribe if you haven't yet. With that being said, I really appreciate you tuning in to this video. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.
West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country road.